really sad that you're here. I hope that this topic is of interest to you. I know this comes up a lot when I do online mentoring and stuff like that. But yeah, my name is Katie. I have a podcast called The Truth for Your 20s, and I'm just very passionate about young women, young men, singles, and young couples. I've been married for 19 years, but between my husband and I, so our two parents, my two parents, his two parents, those four humans have a total of 9 divorces, which is not a good thing. And so we kind of walked into this thing called marriage with not a lot of ideas of how to do this thing well. So we have just been very intentional about reading books, learning from people smarter than us, going to conferences and understanding how to do relationships well. And all of that information just got me passionate about sharing it with those behind me. So that's kind of one of the ideas and passions behind my podcast, Truth for Your 20s. And I also travel to sororities. I'm a speaker to colleges, sororities specifically, and I get to travel all over the nation and talk to young women about raising the bar when it comes to dating and just having all kinds of good things. But that's definitely one of the hottest topics. And I also talk about it on social media, as you do, right? Yeah, okay, good. I see the room filling up. I'm glad that you guys are all here. So excited. Thank you for sharing where you're from. Continue to do that. The chat box is always open. I'd love to hear from you guys. I'll be kind of putting an eye over there from time to time. But you are also welcome to join this conversation. So if I say something along the way that makes you want to add to the conversation, feel free to do so. But just be respectful and try not to be too long-winded because we want to give time for other people to talk. But before we open the mic for other people, I want to just kind of get into what we're talking about today. And as you see, the title of this room is Having High Standards versus Being Realistic. You are 48, so honey, you are in the right room, all the different ages. As I said, I host the Truth for Your 20s podcast, but we talk to all different ages and genders and races and everything like that here on SALT. So everyone is welcome, no matter what. All right, so having high standards versus being realistic. As I alluded to a second ago, I do online mentoring. And so it typically, I have generally young ladies, but people reach out to me and just kind of like in a situationship or in a difficult relationship or maybe in a great relationship and just not sure, the classic question of, is this the one? And so it kind of, I feel like we always boil down to really the question behind this is, am I expecting too much or am I being realistic? Where's the balance? And I'm a women's empowerment speaker, right? So I'm paid by colleges to go tell women, you have power, raise the bar when it comes to dating. And I believe all of that. But I feel like in this relationship, in this conversation, as with many things, there's pendulums, right? And we have this far extreme of, they must look like a movie star. They must act like Jesus. They must be debt free. They must be 6'3", whatever it is, and okay, there's that. And then there's this other side is if they have a pulse, then they look like a great date. And it's like, okay, maybe we need to come a little bit more, excuse me, we need to come a little bit more in the middle and have what I call the messy middle and have these conversations of having high standards versus being realistic. Yes, as someone just alluded, I think it is better to kind of steer or lean in the direction of having high standards because, and again, it depends on who you are and where you lean naturally, but usually most people lean more toward, oh, well, they like me and they have a pulse, so therefore I must date them. I don't know why. There's a lot of reasons people might think. I think a lot of that's based in self-worth. And so I have very strong feelings about people, understanding their self-worth and raising the bar, not dating people who don't treat them well, understanding they are a rare and precious jewel created in the image of Christ and should be treated as such. However, again, we also have this conversation of like, literally, I talked to a girl and was like, on our second date, I already told him what kind of flowers I liked, and he didn't bring me that type of flowers. So I just knew it wouldn't last. And I had to like break up with him or not see him anymore. And I'm like, he brought you flowers. Sorry, they were the wrong kind, but like, have a little grace. You know what I mean? And this especially comes into dating long term or even marriage, because there is, comfortability, and we get sometimes complacent, and that's not good. We should obviously continue to date each other. But sometimes in marriage, people will be like, oh, well, he hasn't brought me flowers in a year, and he leaves his dirty laundry on the floor. Like, yeah, because he's human, and so are you, and we're all flawed. And so this is where I want to have this conversation, in this messy middle. I'll get mom I'll get her mom flowers and chocolates. Nice. Nice, Devon. Yes. That's always good. An ungrateful heart, someone said about the flowers. Yeah. I mean, so this is where I want to have this messy middle conversation. All right. So let's talk first about raising your self-worth, because I think that this is most often what I see when I talk to singles. I just don't understand why I'm in this relationship. I don't understand why, quote, there's no good guys, there's no good girls out there. I hear that a lot. And I believe that we teach others how we want to be treated. So I'm going to unpack that here for a second, because when I hear, again, I work mostly with young women, but if I hear a girl say, "Oh, there's no good guys out there," or I keep dating guys who treat me like crap, like, well, my sweet friend, this might be hard to hear, but we teach others how we want to be treated. If you are continually saying, "Yes, it's okay to only want to talk to me after midnight. It's okay to just, continually talk on Snapchat, or continually, pretend like we're dating social, but not actually meet in real person, to say I'm going to be there, but I don't, to say I'm going to call, but I don't, not follow through on my promises. And you keep saying, oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Then they're going to think it's fine. And they're going to continue to just like, okay, well, that you're setting the bar, the precedent of, I can do what I want and kind of walk all over you. You're not a doormat, right? And so these are the things to kind of, you teach others how you want to be treated. Now, as we're having this conversation of the pendulum, I don't think it's very attractive or very just honoring to another relationship if you are also like, well, if you don't open the door for me every time, then you're a piece of trash. If you don't call every time you say, like, also things happen. Also, there is life. Also, there are humans. And when you do the research on what makes happy couples last, it is assuming the best in each other. So I got a spoiler alert for you. Whoever you date and marry, they are going to get things wrong. They are going to drop the ball sometimes. But in happy couples have a history of assuming the best in each other. And okay, so they're late for a date, assuming they're stuck in traffic, not that they just, were lazy and didn't set their alarm or just didn't get there in time or whatever. If they, I don't know, didn't call when they said they would, they got stuck at work. Like there's life that happens. So again, this is pendulum of having high standards versus being realistic. So I'm going to go to the chat box. There's a lot of good questions you guys are bringing up. But before I do, I see Pablo, you have raised your hand. So you are welcome to join the conversation. You can unmute yourself and go ahead and say what you'd like to say.
Yeah, thank you very much. God bless you before everything. And Katie, thank you for give us the opportunity to speak. First of all, I would like to say that everyone has a history, right? A background, previous relationships. As for me, as I said in the chat box, I'm 48, so it's not realistic to someone to expect me to have no background. Some people expect from you to have no history, and trying to avoid that you had previous relationships and stuff like that. But as I was talking to someone in the chat previously. um, if someone has interest in you, she or he will show it, and will make sure that any detail that you would expect from that people is, it'll reach you, and they will let you know that you're important for them. But let's be real, we all have flaws, as you said. So in the dating stage of our relationship, everything it's like perfect. But for married people, the real person comes out when you're married. So any flaws you should know, and you should know them beforehand, and you should know that everybody has flaws and everybody's imperfect. you know
Yes, for sure. No, yeah. Thank you so much for adding to that, Pablo.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, Pablo is just kind of really driving the point home, and I'm thankful that you did that. Yeah, we're definitely all flawed, and understanding that. And going back to the chat, a lot of people said some interesting things about. There's this idea of, well, there's two ideas really in the chat box. People were saying, "Oh, well, I'm going to say yes to dating you because I'm a Christian and I'm just nice and I'm going to like just say yes and be kind to you and no matter what." So there is that school of thought, obviously. And there's this school of thought of you can do whatever and you walk all over me and I'll be a doormat. Jesus was not a doormat. Jesus, he knew his barriers. He was very clear about the way he was to be treated. He another thing that people can say whatever they want about you, but you have the opportunity to prove them wrong. And so the way you show up, the way you conduct yourself, the way you allow to be treated. And then there's this other school of thought of, I'm a Christian, and therefore, unless you have the entire Bible memorized and you come to me, treat me like want to be my Boaz or whatever, there's this idea of perfection as well. And this is why we're having this conversation here of both extremes are unrealistic and having this conversation in the messy middle. But one thing I want to talk about is this is kind of my brain when it comes to marketing. So my background is in marketing. I've worked in TV, print, and radio advertising. And I'm also colleagues with a PhD of sexual health. And so kind of the science and the brain chemistry and the way our brains work, it just really interests me when it comes to dating. And one thing that's really just on point for our conversation today is something called the paradox of choice. There's a book about this, a lot of studies, and it relates to marketing and also just psychology. But essentially, there is the paradox of choice. It means when you have thousands of options, you have none. So let me unpack this a little bit. There was a famous study done at a grocery store, and they would put out different types of jam, like, yes, peanut butter and jelly, that type of jam. And study after study shows when they would put out like maybe 3 to 6 options, they would have a lot of sales. And the next day, same grocery store, same amount of traffic, whatever it was, they tested this in every different way. 3 to 6 options, a lot of sales. 12 or more options, sales plummeted. And what they found over and over is when you have tons of choices, you have none. And I think this is so interesting when it comes to our modern dating, because we have this idea of, well, I just haven't found the one, or I just need to keep swiping. I need to, well, just keep going. And until someone's always going to be better. Someone's always going to be prettier. Someone's always going to be more spiritual or whatever. And yes, you shouldn't settle. Again, we're going to have this conversation over and over again. Yes, you shouldn't settle just because they're nice and they know a Bible verse. But at the same time, we have this idea of, oh, well, I just haven't found them. And I'm just going to keep swiping until I found this. Like, that's a savior complex, right? This is person of, they're going to make all my hopes and dreams come true. They're going to be perfect. Jesus is the only one who is perfect. I know you guys know this, but goodness, Cinderella and rom-com movies and even our culture gives this idea of once you find the person, then once I find the right person, all my problems will be solved. I'll get married and live in a white picket fence, and and it's just so. Jesus is the only person that can complete you. As I said, I've been married for 19 years, and I have a wonderful husband. But I remember my younger self kind of having this idea of like, once I meet the right person, all my problems will be solved. And I have a theory that there are no such thing as marriage problems. There are single people problems in a marriage. Unpack that for a second. There are no such thing as marriage problems. There are single people problems in a marriage. And so the best gift we can give our future marriages is working on our single people problems, because we all have them, right? We all have some time that we need to like work out some parenting issues, time on a counselor's couch, maybe getting out of debt, maybe going to the gym, whatever it may be. the best gift you can give your future relationship is working on that best version of yourself. Okay, I unpacked a lot there. We talked about the paradox of choice, having high standards versus being realistic, and a lot in between. I see some hands raised. I want to let you guys have the floor for a minute. So, Devon, you can unmute yourself and come to the mic. Devon, you're good to go if you're available. All right, Devon, I'll give you a second to get your mic if you're available. And we're going to go ahead and give Martha the mic. Oh, I didn't mean to do that, Nick. Nick, if we'll put you back. Martha, if you want to speak, go ahead.
Yeah. When discussing the topic of high expectations and how that can cause some frustrations in a relationship, one of the things I have seen continue that in a series is when you go from a very high intensity relationship and for whatever reason you have to break it off, and then you move on to someone new too quickly. That doesn't give yourself time to reset your expectations, because how you treat someone out like who's been with you for 9 months is different than how someone you've been dating for 2 weeks. Not in terms of like they're more mean to you, but like in how often they call, in how much you prioritize each other's company over, say, your hobbies or spending time with friends. It can be very what secrets you tell each other, how much of your inner thoughts you've exposed. And it can be, that's a kind of intimacy. And it can be hard to go from a high intimacy situation to a low intimacy situation. It's one of the signs that for myself that I haven't moved on and maybe not, and I'm not ready to, is if I find myself kind of expecting like them to behave the same way as my ex, because then I have to check myself and go, in the Bible, when Jesus met with Mary and Martha at Lazarus's grave, he treated them very different. He gave Mary the calculating, thoughtful, calm, almost normal conversation that she clearly preferred, whereas he openly wept with Mary. So I think Jesus calls us to treat each person as a new situation. That doesn't mean you don't have standards for, well, he's not allowed to call me, the B word in a fight, or he's not allowed, I'm not going to stand here and let him badmouth me in front of my family, basic things like that. But, things like, well, how well does he call me after work? Or, how often does he tell me I'm pretty? That's an intimacy that's new, that should be new with each relationship. One of the things that's my first thought. I have another thought, but I can come back to that later, and so that other people can get a chance to speak first.
No, you're good. Thank you so much, Martha. Actually, you said things that I would love to unpack. So yeah, if you want to add more to later, feel free. That was very good. Martha said a few things I want to make sure I unpack because they're so important. And that is what she kind of talked about at the beginning, how you act in someone you've known for 3 weeks versus someone you've known for 3 months or 3 years is different. And that's okay. Like there's something to be, I mean, we all put our best foot forward, as you should. That's just human nature. And it would be concerning if you were like burping and farting and wearing like sweats on a first date. You know what I mean? Like you should put your best foot forward. But I had a call last week, a salt table conversation last week, where we talked about the science of falling in love. And there actually is science behind what you're talking about there. And it's infatuation. You probably heard of the term infatuation, but it's really a chemical process in your brain where you are falling in like. And it clouds judgment. It is hard to see the other person on this other side of this infatuation very clearly because you have rose-colored glasses and they can do no wrong. And you think no one has ever loved like this before, right? This is what the movies are all about. Like, oh my gosh, I will do anything for them. I'll stay up as late as it takes and spend as much money as it takes because you're just googly eyed, right? And that's fine. It's cute. It's normal. It's the butterfly stage, as we say. And it's something to always respect and maybe even like try and reach, but it is something that neurologically can only last 12 to 18 months. And what happens a lot of times is people have this, oh my gosh, you're the best thing ever. And 2 years down the road, that high has faded. I hope they're still in love. And there's a lot more to that and how you can kind of still build that infatuation. I'll talk about in a second. But what happens, unfortunately, is a lot of times people, oh, well, I just don't feel it anymore. I'm going to leave this relationship. And they're chasing another infatuation stage. And so it goes and so it goes. And they're like perpetually never in a long-term relationship because they're always facing this stage that can only neurologically last 12 to 18 months. Now, we all want to be googly-eyed over our spouse till the end of time, right? That's what they show us on the movies. But spoiler, when people are getting together to write the script of a movie, there are no relationship experts anywhere to be found in the boardroom. These are people wanting to entertain us and wanting to make money. I love a rom-com. I love good movies, but let's remember they are not real life. They are not realistically portraying to us how to do relationships well. So unpack that for a second. But really, as I said, I've been married 19 years. I think the good comes past when you get past that infatuation. I think that the good part is when you come to like, we've seen each other sick. We've, the whole enricher and poorer. We've been to job changes. We have moved cities. We've known each other before we had kids. And then, of course, after having kids, having teenagers, stress of parents getting older. These are different stages we have found ourselves in. And I argue that the good comes past the infatuation and it's more of a deeper, richer love. It has history to it. I think it's sad when, divorce is so sad for so many reasons, but I just think about how you see couples that have been together for a while and they're like, what's the name of that place we went when the kids were younger and yada, yada vacation. And when couples don't last this test of time, it's so sad because all those memories are lost, right? That person that was with you when the kids had their first steps, that person that was with you when they had the vacation 10 years ago. It's just lifetimes of memories and all of these things you built together as you build a lifetime together, I argue is better than the infatuation stage. All right, a few more things I want to unpack, but Nick, I see your hand raised very patiently. Thank you so much. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Go ahead, Nick, you can unmute. Hi.
Hey, Katie. Thank you very much for just all that. You've given some really, really good golden nuggets there. So you have. See, in terms of this is kind of a question for you, Katie. So when you're going to when you're going on to college campuses, and you're actually talking about like the empowerment of women in kind of that space, could you kind of elaborate just in terms of just on that, and what are kind of some of the common issues that you're running into when you're doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for asking. So one of the things I often talk about, and actually someone just alluded to this, is way to keep your standards is to write them down. So I always kind of joke about how, an architect makes a blueprint before they ever break ground. A business owner makes a budget before the next fiscal year. Yet my incredible women that I'm talking to specifically, but men as well, walk into dating, one of the potentially most important decisions of your life, with no plan. So I encourage people to write down a dating plan. Now, this isn't necessarily a list of like, oh, they must be tall, dark, and handsome, and they must blah, 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 blah. Just what are some non-negotiables? And when I'm doing mentoring and I can kind of dive into this topic a little deeper, I argue your only one non-negotiable should be a shared faith. And I don't mean, yes, they go to church. I mean, do they have a growing relationship with the Lord? And is there fruit in their life? And what I say, okay, you say you want that, because it's very easy to say you want that. I bet everyone in this room wants their partner to have a growing relationship with the Lord. And then I ask them to flip that around and say, does that reflect you? Does that describe you? Because we cannot expect a Jesus loving, wonderful future dating partner to come into our lives. He or she is also wanting the same thing. And so we have to be pursuing the Lord as well. And like having a relationship with the Lord is like the bare minimum. Is it growing? And I always like to ask, not necessarily where they are, but where they are going. So when my husband and I first met, he was a youth pastor. He'd been walking with the Lord for like over a decade at this point. I was a brand new baby Christian who had like just stepped out of my wild party days and was pursuing the Lord. But he will tell you one of the things that really just kind of attracted me to him was that I was very passionate, that if I only had one page of scripture, I wanted to like eat it up and live that out with my whole life. And so I guess for him, he wasn't necessarily concerned of where I was, but where I was going. And so I wouldn't worry too much, how long your partner or potential partner has been a Christian, but where are they going? Where is their passion? Because hopefully, if this works out, this is a forever thing. And where you're going, they say over several hundred miles, if you switch the direction of a plane or a ship just 1 degree, it's going to end up thousands of miles in a completely different direction. And so over years, if you are shifting in a slightly different direction, that can end up completely different destination. Okay, so I see a few more hands raised. Danny G, you're welcome to unmute yourself and add to the conversation. Danny G, you there?
How's it going? You okay?
Yes, hello.
Good. Yeah, I don't know. A couple of people in the chat have been sort of talking about like people like being kind of deceptive as to their relationship with God and putting a face on and kind of being all holy and stuff, and then when you get married, kind of, or maybe I don't know, maybe you're through the dating cycle and not so much interested in God. And I think, I've definitely come across that myself, where people ladies have been kind of really interested in God, like, and you'll like talk to their friends and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, since she's known you, she's been a lot more committed to get to church, and that should have been a red flag straight away, I guess. But I guess in some ways, maybe you are being a good influence on that person, but then again, at the same time, you think, well, how real is that relationship that they have? So in terms of the high standards, yeah, I'd like to be with someone that is really on fire for God, but then how do I know it's a long-term fire and not a short-term fling, if you like?
Yes, I think that unfortunately, this is a little bit of just the faith, the gamble. There are no guarantees in life. I wish there were. That would make things a lot easier. Um, yeah, I don't know that there is a surefire way, right? Because even us can stumble and stuff like that. So I think that the best suggestion I would have for that is to continually to date, continually to surround yourself in a Christian, being involved in church, a small group, whatever it may be. And those who you surround yourself with are very important. So, unfortunately, I have a good friend who's walking through a divorce of a guy who, was a Christian leader and wrote a lot of Christian books. Like you would never guess. And it's heartbreaking. And I don't think, if you kind of retrace the steps, I don't know what she could have done differently. I do know that God never wastes a hurt, that he's going to use both of their stories for something much bigger than we ever see. It's a story I wouldn't have written, but I know that God is good and he can be trusted. And I think that all of the what ifs in life kind of boil down to that. Like, I don't want A, B, and C to happen, but I know that God is good and he can be trusted. And so just knowing that and doing your best effort is kind of where it comes into the, obedience and faith. And we have to have both. And it's a balance, as this whole conversation is, right? But yeah, I think that's how I would answer that.
Yeah, and I think as well, like for me, the hardest thing was walking away from that relationship, because I'd invested like 3 years, and about 2 years talking before that. So that's like 5 years I've invested in that relationship. And it's like, God, are you really telling me to walk away from that now? But he totally was. And there was 2 confirmations, well, more than 2 actually, strong confirmations that God was definitely saying to walk away. But like you said, it's obedience, isn't it?
It is. And yeah, I mean, if you have confirmation from the Lord, obviously I wouldn't argue with that. So that's, yeah, it's there's so many variables, and it's obedience and faith and trust and all of the things. So I'm sorry that you had to walk through that, but I know that God will use that for sure. Oops. Okay. I thank you so much for adding to the conversation, Danny. I'm gonna get a few more topics, but before we do, I have a few more hand raised. Mixie, love to hear what you have to say. You can unmute yourself, Mixie.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I really wanted to touch upon what was just mentioned on people kind of hiding or being deceitful in their faith I for one like to mention my journey with Christ on my profile, just to really sift the wheat and make sure that I chase away all unwanted how do you say it, all unwanted partners. But also one thing that I discovered that really helps is I always usually ask um guys to pray for me. So let's say we are having a phone call at night before bed, and so I'm like, hey, can you pray for me? And mind you, this is someone that says, they have a journey with Christ, but they can't even pray like a simple prayer. So immediately I can already detect, okay, I can detect what level this person is on, and I can decide then from there to, cut communication and be like, okay, thank you for your time, but I need someone who is able to pray over me and pray over my family. And that's one of the indicators I use to detect someone's journey and faith. um, but one question also I have is, how much detail should we put in our bio? Because yeah, mine is usually to scare people off. But I think maybe I scare it's doing too much scaring. So I don't really know what advice you have in that regard.
Mixie, I love that you said that to scare people off. Someone asked, one of the things that comes up often when I talk to young women, and that is it. It's like, oh, well, if I have high standards in dating, then that will narrow my dating pool. Yes. Yes, it will. The person who only wants one thing from you, the person who treats you like crap, the person, they're no longer going to be an option for you. You are welcome, right? So coming back to that conversation of the paradox of choice, you don't need thousands of options. You just need one good option. Can I get an amen? And so, Mixie, I think that it's funny that you said that you scare people off. I don't think. Now I'm curious. I have to look at your profile, my friend, and see what it said. Oh wait, where did you go? Here it is. Okay, I'm looking at your profile right here. I'm sold out for Christ. I mean, I think that's great. I think that it's clear. And, one of the things that I often tell young women too is clarity is kindness. And so this was alluded to earlier when we were talking about what matters to you or what are your standards. I think the one non-negotiable is a shared faith, but there might be some things that you really value. And how is your partner supposed to know if you don't tell them? I don't know what it is, and if this is a first date conversation or not, but if you feel very loved and valued, if he or she checks in and once a day, how was your day? If that is just like fills your love tank and that's important to you, I mean, I would say it earlier than later. You don't have to like say it in a demanding way, just in a kind way. Especially if they've done it, because what gets rewarded gets repeated. And so if it's like, hey, it really meant a lot to me when you checked in with me yesterday. I just let you know that really meant a lot, something like that. That speaks volumes. And so if you see what you want to see, let them know. Clarity is kindness. And women, guys, we are not good at this. And I'm sorry, men, women have a tendency to think that you can read our mind. I apologize on behalf of all women. because we do. And I don't know. I'm sure the psychology behind that as well. But women, we need to clearly communicate to our men, the men in our life, as we start to date, if we're single or currently dating, what you value, what's important to you. And when they say what's wrong and you say nothing, they're going to believe you. They're going to believe that's nothing. And so we can do the men in our life a favor by just being clear as we can. I know we sometimes think they can have it all figured out, but they don't. They're imperfect just like we are. So I see some so true in the comments. Okay, Sandra, love to hear what you have to say. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you so much for this conversation. Really good. I think I just wanted to add the contribution on the infatuation and stages of dating and all that. I think it's just from, like I've gone through divorce, I've healed through divorce, I've gone through a lot of things. And I think we worry so much about everything. And I think sometimes we do forget to trust God and we worry about all of it. And I think I just wanted to also just say that, it's all part of the process. It's interesting that there's the science of the start of a relationship because that's how we were made, by God. So we have to try and enjoy every part of that process. And if we get hurt, we have to make the effort to heal from some of these things and then move on and know that there's something new. The day starts with a new day because it's a new beginning every day. So I think it's just that reminder not to get too stressed with the whole process of meeting people and getting to know people, heal from it, learn from it, and then move to the next one. Don't hold on to memories. If you've got memories, process them, like you spoke about how you get divorced, and you have a mental mess of memories, right? And you don't lose them, you process them, and then you get the good stuff out. Because, I've got kids from that, but they still walked, and I still remember their first day with their dad being there, and that's now a good memory for me because I processed it. So I think it was just that addition of saying that, as we process through the process and we accept things for what they are, I think we'll get to enjoy it more so that you don't reflect back and think, oh, what a stressful time that was. It's like you want to be that tree that's always producing in season because you fully accept the season you're in. I'm in a dating season and I'm going to accept everything that comes with it. That's all I wanted to say.
Evelyn, thank you so much. Also, you guys have such beautiful accents. I'm over here with my southern accent in the US, but I hear so many London accents and I love it. Thank you so much. I was just noticing in the chat box and I misread something, but it was actually kind of funny. Lydia said, Evelyn, you are welcome. The good news is that the more picky you are, the better dating life flows. And I read dating more like flowers because picking the flowers, haha. Just thought that was kind of funny. And it's true, this is a paradigm of being selective yet being realistic. And again, just defining what matters to you. I see a few more hand raised. I'm going to get to you 1 second. I just want to point out something that we talked about on our last talk that a lot of people really resonated with. And that is the different forms of intimacy. Someone alluded to this, and I don't want to forget it because as you date, as you get to know each other, these are ways that you bond. And oftentimes when we say physical or we say intimacy, people think physical intimacy. And I'm like, get your mind out of the gutter. I'm just kidding. But that is just one form of intimacy. So I'm going to write it here in the chat box. It's an acronym, MESSP. So there is mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and physical intimacy. And what I like to say on TikTok is if you just have the P without the rest, you are left with a mess. See what I did there? If you just have physical intimacy without the rest, you are left with a mess because we are so much more than just our physical bodies. You are a mental, emotional, spiritual, and social human being. And there's so much more to you. And those are just ways to get, hey, thank you. You like it. Those are just ways we can connect and grow in intimacy and get to know each other. And what beautiful ways to unpack who you are as a human and how God knit you together. So I love that little acronym. It stuck with our last group. So I wanted to share that. Okay, Nick, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Oh, hey, yeah, sorry, I meant to finish up when you had me on there earlier. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
Yeah. So, No, I definitely see where obviously you're coming from, but I think there's definitely I think the vast majority, just even reading the comments there, um, I'm definitely seeing the vast majority of people when they don't really know their why well enough, and in terms of people really like getting to know themselves, I think that requires a level of I would say emotional work of actually looking into, because if you think about if people are looking through what it is that they absolutely want, and so if you're looking at, for example, standards and where people go and get their standards actually from. I mean, I had a conversation with somebody that's been on the room here before who actually reached out to me, and one of the things I said to her, I said, well, I said, and she was making like lots of excuses, like, and I said, well, you said you want to do better. You said you want this, so it's either a yes or a no answer. It's not actually complicated. But one of the things that I've definitely learned, Katie, from I think from being an elite performer, is that, and some of the things I've done in my life, I definitely believe people are afraid of what they'll actually become, and I think that actually scares people. And I've seen it with quite a few people that obviously that I'm working at in terms of the life coaching I do, and in terms of to get to the very, there's a reason very few people make it to the top. There's a very simple reason for that. Like even if you look in the Bible, if you look in, like, for example, if you look at David, okay, David didn't crank on the family front, but it said that he expected victory everywhere he went. So that'll kind of tell you what his thought process was, and how he became what he became. And I think a lot of people, when they kind of see that, they're not really willing to pay the price for that. They don't really, they talk about they want things, but um, I don't know. I think my days at Manchester United, I don't think we ever talked about when I was part of that club, in the time I was there. We never talked about it, and teams knew they were beat before they turned up. Do you know what I mean? Because the people that were in that building within that club were all winners. They had an expectation of reaching their full potential as people, not just as athletes, but as people that wanted to improve. And I think that I've definitely learned as the years have gone by that there's definitely people have to think in a certain way, and they have to be willing to like learn and become great students of learning. So, and that's the only way when they'll literally become they'll literally become so powerful that they can't even recognize what it is that got them there. And I think that that's really the key, as I'm seeing, just in terms of to become what you want to become and to get what you want. So it's one thing is setting standards, like that girl that was in earlier. She was saying she wants to set standards and she wants to have this, and yeah, but at the same time, like, what I mean, she also has to be able to look at herself and continue to do work on herself. That bit isn't. It's not just going to appear. I just don't think that's how. I just don't think that's how it works. And so, I definitely would encourage a lot of the people in the room that, if they're saying I want this, but what are they doing? I would probably be looking at myself before I'd be looking at someone else. To be honest, and partake in your own rescue. That's really the key, to be honest. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. No, yes, Nick, great. Thank you for adding to the conversation. So many great things you guys are saying in the chat box and at the microphone. I only have 15 more minutes and I have a few more things I want to make sure we touch on. If I can get through all that, I would love to let those people who have their hands raised to come to the mic. You guys, make sure you check out the chat. There's a lot of good conversation going on there. But a few things I want to make sure I point out. Some of you guys have mentioned this and I wrote down some notes real quick and I wanted to allude to that. But one thing that you may not know is there's actually stats on how people meet. And obviously we're all here in a dating app here. So dating app is actually, internet is actually the second most highest. First most highest is a mutual friend. So don't be afraid to like reach out to people you know and love and respect, and like, hey, I am open to being set up. Like it's okay to ask that. People know and love you, but it's not at the top of their mind as it is yours. So ask your loved ones. Hey, just want to put that as bug in your ear. I'm open to be set up if you know someone who you might think is a good match. And this is also stressful on the person setting you up. So don't be offended if they don't, send you a perfect match. Just be open to what your friends might suggest. So that's an option. But someone suggested church. Church is a wonderful place to meet. That's where I met my husband, but it's actually far less common than dating apps is the second most common. And I think that hopefully we kind of have the marriage of two worlds here on Salt, because it is a faith-based dating app. So ideally this kind of helps narrow your dating options in a good way. As we talked about earlier, that narrowing your dating options can be a very good thing because you don't need millions of options, right? You just need one good one. Oh, someone just asked a good question that I want to make sure I don't miss. Katie, do you think today's standards of dating are selfish desires or wants? I have a lot of thoughts. My first thought is yes. However, I love, I'm sorry, I have so many things I want to say. Gen Z, which I know not everyone here is Gen Z, but a lot of the young people I talk to are Gen Z. And I do have excitement for that generation. I do have excitement for the way current dating is in some ways. I'm a little bit Pollyanna over here with excitement of the option of dating apps. These didn't even exist when I was dating. I do believe that there is good. So I want to say that first of all. The other conversation is, yes, I do believe there is a lot of selfishness. There is a lot of what's in it for me, right? And Jesus modeled a very sacrificial type of unconditional love. And when we do get married, I believe that the gift of marriage is an example of how to show up and show my husband what Jesus looks like here on this earth. And he gets the opportunity to do the same to me. Now, yes, this can be toxic if only one person is doing it, but ideally we're both showing up every day and being an example of Jesus to each other. And, sometimes he's going to get this a little bit more right than I am and vice versa. But over the course of years, and that's important too, because, you're going to go through seasons where someone is just more selfish or more tired or just doesn't have as much to give than the other. And it ebbs and flows ideally over the course of a relationship and over the course of years together. But this idea of showing up and serving each other, people don't think there's this idea of what's in it for me versus how can I serve this person. Imagine all the problems that would be solved in relationships if everyone sought to outserve the other person, right? Like, I want to serve you more. No, I want to serve you more. That would solve a lot of the world's dating options or problems, I should say. Okay, another thing I wanted to make sure I didn't miss is the sunken cost theory. Someone talked about this when it talked about when you invest a lot in a relationship. So this is a theory as it relates to finance or business. Like I said, my background is in marketing. When people have an investment, let's say you buy a fixer-upper house and you sunk $10,000 into it, and then you realize it needs a new water heater and a new roof, and you just the theory is that people want to keep sinking money into something, even if it is proven to be like, hey, you got to count your losses because you're not going to make any money anymore off this investment. Like, just, cut the Band-Aid off, and it is what it is. That is true also sometimes as it relates to relationships, because we often think, well, I already have a year invested. I already have, whatever it may be. And that it's tricky, because in a marriage, I would say yes, and you're building memories and you're building a beautiful life together, and you need to continue to grow that relationship. But if this is a relationship that God has told you and you feel very clear this is not for you, it is probably time to count your losses, because the sunken cost theory tells us, oh, well, you need to keep sinking money or investment or time or whatever it is into a failing investment. And sometimes you need to just count your losses. Okay. Had so many things I didn't want to make sure that I had forgotten. And okay, if someone says something else, I will make sure I bring it up. But since I see so many hands raised, I'm going to make sure I get to people who haven't come to the mic yet. Zoe, feel free to unmic yourself. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hey, Katie. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. How are you doing, Katie?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us.
Good. When I just wanted to share that when I think of maybe high standards, or I guess I wouldn't maybe describe it as high, because I feel like maybe some of my friends would maybe, or people in the world would maybe say that it's a high standard, but I just think it's perhaps a difference. And something for me that I've maybe struggled with is I don't want to have sex before I get married. Although I do want to, but not prepared to, maybe, shall I say. And that is somewhat seen as a bit of a high standard, but I don't like, again, high kind of gives me the vibe of like, oh, I'm better than you sort of thing. Like, oh, my standards are really high. But yeah, so that's something that I have struggled with to well, it's not really a struggle, because it's going well, in terms of, I suppose, like you said earlier, when you just picking, you just kind of keep going. But yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
Oh,
Yeah.
Zoe, no, I'm so glad you did. This is actually a topic I talk a lot about on social media. So I'm going to shamelessly plug myself here. Katie Bulmer Life on TikTok and Instagram. Sex before marriage. So like I said, I have a lot to say about this. I did a podcast episode called The Why Behind the Wait. I think you know this, Zoe, and I'm glad that you brought this up, but I think it's so important just to know the why of why you're waiting. And for me, I did not wait, and my husband did. And I wish that I would have, because my 17-year-old self didn't know that I would meet this amazing man of God who had waited for me. And, I was just living for selfish desires and stuff like that. And what I wish I would have known, although I wasn't a Christian at the time, that you have a good and loving father who knit you together, who invented the hormones of oxytocin and dopamine and serotonin and vasopressin and all these hormones that bond us to the other person, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't know that would create such a bond. First of all, I didn't trust that God was so smart and invented all of this stuff. I didn't understand that he created this gift of sex, not just for kicks and giggles, not because he wanted to take away my fun if I, didn't have it before marriage, but because he knew how much it would bond. And he knew the pain when I had to walk away from a sexually active relationship if it didn't work out in the end. He's a good and loving father, and he can be trusted. I wish I would have understood all of that. And that is what I like to tell singles and young people, that I don't think your standards are too high at all, Zoe. I believe that this should be a conversation especially had by Christians, a conversation that, first of all, knowing your why, not just saying, I want to wait for marriage because my mama said so or whatever, like understanding why and being able to bring it up sooner than later. I had a friend, she said that she would bring it up like date 1 or date 2. She would bring it up at church, say, oh, where do you go to church? And they would say, wherever. She'd go, oh, cool. Yeah, I go to so-and-so. Actually, my faith is really important to me. I'm waiting for marriage. She would just say it. As someone else alluded to earlier, sometimes I'm afraid I'll scare people away. Yeah, well, you might scare the bad ones away, but the good ones are going to be like, wow, I'm glad that she brought that up because that's important to me too. And I also have very strong feelings that this should be both of your decision. Oftentimes it is put on the woman of like, I want to wait for marriage. And the guy says, I respect your decision to wait. Men, we know that, studies show us that you're driven more by physical, that, you have maybe a stronger sexual desire, but women have sexual desires too. Okay. And we need to be on the same page. This needs to be not just, I respect your decision to wait. This needs to be, I'm on the same page with you. I want to fight the good fight with you. Listen, if you are sexually attracted to the person you date, this is a good thing. This means your hormones are working. This means you think that they are hot. These are all very good things in a marriage. We want these things, right? And for easy math, if you were married when you were 30 and you lived till you were 100, you have 70 years to enjoy each other. And I hope that you do. And I hope that you have very strong sexual attraction. Okay. But when you were dating, you were still figuring each other out. You were also a test of obedience. You were saying, is my God good? Can he be trusted? And if so, did he reserve this gift of sex to have under this oath, under this contract of before man and God and my mama and my grandma, I pledge to this person for the rest of my life? And if that is so, then I need you, boy and girl, to be on the same page of you and me together. We are going to reserve this gift of sex for marriage, because like a fire in my fireplace, it is a good thing. Right here in my office in the middle of the floor, it is a very destructive thing. And so understanding this idea that God created for us and communicating that to your partner is so important. Zoe, I'm so glad you brought that up. Can you tell I have strong feelings about this subject? I just think it's important. I think our world is saying hook up with whoever you want, whenever you want. And we can see this is not working. We can see that, remember, sex creates children. And we also know the statistics show us that, children benefit from having a mother and father both present in the home. This is controversial in our world because people say, I want to hook up with whoever I want, whenever I want. And cultures that have tried this, they have not benefited. It has really, really done a lot of destruction, especially for women, as it comes to this selfish behavior of hookup culture and stuff like this. This is not how we're designed. There's so much science behind how sex bonds us together. And I think that we need to have conversations, especially as Christians, to honor each other. If this relationship doesn't work out, how can I leave this person better than I found them versus what's in it for me? All right. Okay. 3 minutes left. Let's see what we can hear from Leanne first. I'm going to make you a speaker.
Hey.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can. Go for it.
Oh, great. So I just wanted to add on the conversation that you were just talking about then. And just the challenge that comes with that. And I'm just going to add this in because I think it's important. So for me, I grew up and I experienced a lot of sexual abuse as a child. And obviously that changes a lot of your mindset when it comes to relationships with guys. And and like you were saying, often people say that it's the men and it's not women. Women aren't wanting it, straight up, but it's not true. And I think it's so important that guys need to be more on their game with that and be like, actually, they need to be just as strong as the women might need to, because it's a two-way thing. And it can be such a challenge to tame it, let's just say. So yeah, and just one question that I do have in my head is, I heard you say about when you wait until you're married, then it's a case of, oh well, it's more of a fact that it might not go wrong, because you're marrying that person. But the truth is, you could still marry somebody, sleep with them, and then it not work and it end up in divorce. So I guess in my head I'm like, so why is the wait? I mean, I'm gonna have to listen to your podcast, because for me, my head goes to that.
No, you're right. You're right. I think it just goes back to the way God designed stuff versus we living in a fallen world, right? Because the very beginning, I like to think about the garden. Adam and Eve lived until they were in their 900s. So I don't know at what point you get wrinkles, but I also believe they were just, smoking hot. They were like, hey, I want you, you want me. There was no comparison. There was no exes. There was no ex-boyfriends. And yeah, I do believe God designed marriage for life, but of course we do live in this fallen world, and unfortunately it doesn't always work out that way. That's the goal and that's the desire. And I think that people, most people hopefully don't get married thinking that will happen. But I think that's one of those things, again, trusting that even if the worst does happen, that God's going to use it for good. But that would be my answer to that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No, thank you, Leanne. Thanks so much for adding to the conversation. Okay, let's see. A few more questions real quick. Our talkers, Emmanuel, what do you have to say? Oops. Let's see. Em, do you have something to say? You can unmic yourself. Unmute yourself. Em, if you have something to say, you can. While you figure that out, I'm going to let Devon go ahead and come to the mic. So who's able to unmute and come to the mic first?
Hey, Katie, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go for it.
Oh, perfect. Hey, Katie, I have a question. I've been doing a little bit of research, and how can I say, like, I'm attracted to like women, especially if they're like really beautiful. But I want to have like really good fruit and like know their Bible and like follow the Bible and like be like really committed and loyal. What I realized with a lot of women in America or even in the church, and I've been doing some research on like a female narcissist, and how can I say, a female narcissist is actually really toxic, and there's like so many red flags. But my question is, how can you get a female narcissist um because if a lady's a female narcissist, it's actually bad for her and she's only hurting herself. Um, but how can you potentially get her to see like, hey, you're wrong in a few ways, or can you change your character or the things that you want? Because you're talking about high standards, and a female narcissist will tend to have a high standards. Um, yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's the answer you don't want to hear, and that is we can't change others. We can only change ourselves.
Yeah.
And so yeah, you won't, especially someone struggling with that. The last person they're going to listen to is someone in a dating relationship. If you need to A, B, and C, you can certainly pray for them. You can model for them what it's like to follow Jesus. And, hey, I just learned this by this podcast. You really like it. They may or may not listen. They may or may not grow from that. But yeah, that's the hardest lesson we all have to learn, that you can't change others. You can only change yourself. I hope that helps. We are a little bit over, but I know, Em, you have been raising your hand for a while, so we'd love to hear what you have to say here at the end. Do you want to come to the mic, Em? Can you unmute yourself?
Hi there, can you hear me now?
Hi, yes, I can.
Oh, very good, very good. Well, good day to all. In regards to what the last gentleman had just said in regards to narcissists in general, if a person who's actually diagnosed with it, they don't want help. They don't believe that they need help.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
showing that to them is like it's an insult. It usually results in narcissistic rage, where they attack you, flip things over, and make you into the bad guy. And so praying for them might be the best thing that they can do if you're not attached to them by family or by blood. That might be the best thing that they can do. But narcissists always breadcrumb you to make it, or faint or swoon to make it seem like they need your help to draw you in to suck your energy. In fact, I lived with a narcissist, and they were draining me to the point where I discovered that I was working out at my house by myself. This is currently, I'm working out my house, but while thinking about what the narcissist has done to me, I found that I could only do 3 reps on a particular exercise. After coming down, after relaxing, after saying I give this over to God, I found out that I was able to do 12. So here's the thing: I'm working with 25% of what I really had when you're dealing with a narcissist, because they're draining literally your life from you. They're draining your strength from you. The last thing I want to take and say very quickly is that it's okay to have high standards, but I think that pettiness is a problem. And so things such as I don't like that person's hair, I don't like their nails, they didn't put on lotion today. But the point is that people can be at different points in their life. Sometimes they're at high points, sometimes at low points. That person's got a hole in their pants. They may be homeless at the moment. We had the secret billionaire that was living in the subways. She was a homeless woman that was walking around, and when she died, in her shopping cart, they found billions of dollars in her shopping cart. But how many people stepped over her? And so how many people will you, God forbid, folks, will step over her thinking that this person is a homeless person, a vagabond, because of how they look, how they present at that moment, when God can raise anybody up and he can bring anybody down at any time. God bless you.
Yes, preach, brother. I think you spoke in our room before. I remember you, and I thank you for what you added to the conversation. Very, very good stuff. You guys, I would love to continue this conversation because we are having such good talk, but I have to wrap it up.